Hey folks, welcome to a podcast about Catholic things. This is Eric, the ambassador of common sense, and I'm here
Dan,
with...
the ambassador of nonsense. Welcome, everyone. It's been a while.
All right, it's been like 2 or 3 months. We both got busy on our ends, and then maybe a little bit lazy too. But there's a whole bunch of crazy things happening, and we're coming up on the election. We say that this isn't a political podcast.
Generally, it isn't.
We do end up talking about politics a lot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this election cycle particularly, there seems to be a lot of relevant stuff for Catholics to think about.
Yeah. I don't think it's ever been... I don't think you could make the case that it would have been sinful for a Catholic not to vote in the past. But I think you can make that case this time.
Yeah.
We are so close to certain things happening, and I think a lot of people realize how important this is, but I think there's even the people who really think it's real important, I don't think they realize
how hopeful it might be.
I think it's more important than most people even realize, because if he's elected, it looks like some huge changes might happen in the United States. And if that happens, I think these changes are going to kind of stream out to the rest of the world. I think other countries will follow us if we can actually stop abortion.
Yeah.
I mean, they do with a lot of other things, you know? For example, women voting. Mm-hmm. The kind of end to racism. That's really started here in America. But anyway, so if you're a subscriber, you're going to get this one long podcast showing up, and then a day or two later, you'll see a whole bunch of small podcasts, like 5, 10, 15-minute ones. And what we're doing is we're going to go over the Biden versus Trump reasons to vote, and then I'm going to split that up into different subjects. Each one, you know, just a small conversation about that subject.
Deeper treatment.
As a separate podcast. So there's going to be a whole bunch of podcasts coming up. But if you listen to the long one, you're listening to the whole thing.
So are we going to talk about the debate at all? Or are we just going to skip that?
You know what? I don't know how much there is to say. I think Biden fooled us. I think he pretended to be a lot worse than he was, thinking maybe Trump would be underprepared, or that everyone else would have set the bar so low that they thought, well, he doesn't have dementia the way we thought he did.
Therefore, let's elect him.
Everything's okay.
Yeah, but
I really think he did that. He
was
did.
Spewing. I mean, it was still, if you're listening to him and you know anything, you're wondering what universe he lives in. Yeah.
He did do that, but I sincerely thought he would be so lost that he would suddenly, you know, wonder where he is.
Yeah, but here's the thing:
the media's not reporting that.
Yeah, no, they're not. But there is one thing that the media is reporting that is typically false for the media. Okay, we've come to expect it from the media these days. It's on a par with the Fine People hoax, and yet it seems to be near the top of every media report on the debate. And I didn't watch the debate, by the way, but I went back and watched the particular segment in order to, figure out, okay, what really went on here. So what the media is reporting is that Trump refused to denounce, in most cases, the media reports refused to denounce white supremacists. The New York Times went so far as to report that Trump refused to denounce white supremacy.
I don't know how they got that.
Well,
I watched it. So he said, "Of course I denounced."
First of all, here's the thing. This is one of those things where the news media is doing its typical false reporting that we've all come to expect, and 70% of Americans, even those who watched the debate, are doing their false rearranging of their memories in order to comport with what the media is reporting, which we've begun to come to expect from Americans, except that fewer and fewer Americans are willing to do that, and that's what's starting to give us a little bit of hope. But first of all, Trump was never asked to denounce white supremacy or white supremacists. What he was actually asked to do was to call out and denounce or criticize the violence. See, the context was, the lead-in was, hey, you've talked a lot about the violence in these cities being perpetrated by Antifa and other leftist groups. Are you willing to call out the same thing and denounce the violence of white supremacists? I'm not reading a transcript, but this was basically the question that was being asked.
Specifically,
and denounce the violence
groups
being done by the white supremacists and tell them that there's no, they shouldn't be responding with violence. And Trump was genuinely confused. He's like, well, sure, I would be willing to do that. And of course, the subtext of that is, I would be willing to do that if there were white supremacy groups out there committing violence. But, and this is the part he said explicitly, as far as I can tell, all the violence is by leftist terrorist organizations, which is exactly the correct, exactly the on-spot, and exactly the truthful answer to the question.
Aside from that, okay, Danny, let's say I say to you, I think you should denounce the white supremacist groups. And I remember there was a spot where he said, well, who?
Yes. And what group did they call out?
Because I don't know of any white supremacists. You can still pull out the old KKK.
Did he call out
but
neo-Nazis?
Who the hell is that?
KKK?
That doesn't exist anymore.
What do you... So who did they call out? Do you remember?
None. He didn't say any specific groups.
He did.
He just said
Biden did.
White supremacist
Wallace didn't.
groups.
Biden did.
Who did he talk about?
Proud Boys.
Proud Boys is not a white supremacy
exactly.
group.
So I mean, I've never watched or heard or paid attention to Proud Boys. So I thought, well, okay, let's see if they're a white supremacy group. Let's go to the Horse's Mouth and look on their page and see what they claim to be, what they stand for.
They have black people. They have Spanish people. They have all kinds of people.
I understand it's run by a Cuban guy. Or maybe founded by a Cuban guy or something like that. They have some leader who's a Cuban guy, I think.
I don't know who's leader now, but you can get a good... If you want to know who they are, you can find a podcast by... what's the name of that? Red Pilled America.
Oh, yeah.
Did an interview with
Patrick
it's a pretty good interview. Yeah, it's a good story.
And so I went to their website. They're explicitly... they're not only not explicitly white supremacists... They're explicitly not white supremacists.
Right.
So
I did not know that Proud Boys
was
called out.
So Trump says who, and Biden calls out a group that's not even a white supremacist group. And Trump said, and what has this group been doing? They've been showing up and merely giving witness to love for America and stuff like that. There have been a few people who have called out and said, hey, you know what? They made sure that I was surrounded and felt safe. Women, black women even, after this event and that event and stuff like that. So they've been doing that. And okay, if you go to the website, it's got crude language and stuff. They're not your gentle church-going Christian types. But far from white supremacists. So Trump gets to the point where he says, okay, who do you want me to condemn? And Biden gives him a group that's not even a white supremacist. And what's Trump going to do? I mean, Trump has just been handed the question, all right, we want you to answer yes or no. Have you stopped beating your wife yet?
Yeah, it's one of those kinds of questions.
So and Trump handled it as appropriately as he could. Proud Boys, stand back and stand ready, or whatever it is he said. Hey, So it was such a
the debate was very frustrating.
A stupid moment, and for that to be the thing that all the news reporters seized on, Trump refuses to denounce white supremacy. It just shows, more than ever, or more of the same of how just blatantly committed to taking every path, regardless of how false, regardless of how much personal and professional integrity they have to give up in order to do so, how committed the news organizations are to making sure Donald Trump does not win this election. And that's what it is about, and that's what it showed. All right, I'm sorry. Yeah. I had to rant on that for a little bit.
Yeah. I'm going to label that debate the Trump-Wallace debate of 2020.
Yeah, James Wood.
That's basically what it was. It was Trump versus Wallace, not maybe Trump versus Wallace and Biden. I mean, that's what the debate was.
Well, I like...
Because Wallace kept debating.
I like the way James Woods characterized it. He said, President Trump crushed his opponent, Chris Wallace, head-to-head in the debate. There was also another fellow wandering around muttering to himself.
Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about specific reasons a person might not vote for Trump.
All right. So I think we've dispensed with the Trump is a racist Nazi thing. Or have
right? Yeah. I mean, and by the way, he never said that neo-Nazis were good people or KKK members. He was talking about a protest. People were protesting the taking down of
a particular statue. Yeah,
statues.
And on both sides of
like Robert
both
E.
sides
Lee.
of that argument over the statue, there were fine people.
Right. And when he said that, he specifically said, I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis.
Yeah, they should be condemned, absolutely. He said that.
He said those words right away. He didn't even have to come out the next day and say that. Okay. I think the racism... I don't know. I don't know what to say about the racism. If you think he's a racist now, you're... purposely not seeing.
Yeah, I mean,
truth.
It's like, there's a point at which we have to rely on you to not be purposely. I don't want to offend our listeners. Hopefully, our listeners aren't the kind of people who really think Trump is a racist. But we got to rely on you to not be purposely idiotic. Okay. Open your eyes and look with real eyes. Now, here's the thing: there is a contingent of people out there who, for whom the word racism means you don't support the kinds of programs that would enforce a equality of socioeconomic outcome for all races of people. Right. I mean, for some people, that's what the word racist is, that you don't believe in heavy-handed government enforcement of socioeconomic outcome equality. All right, that's a different debate.
Case,
if you really think that, you probably should not vote, even if you're Catholic.
Yeah, definitely. But let's talk about probably the number one reason someone would not vote, and that's just laziness.
Okay, yeah.
Because it's a thing. You got to go there, and you have to stand in line. And this is going to be terrible this year. They're going to have each person 6 feet apart. Lines. The masks.
Yeah.
They're going to make it so difficult to vote. And a lot of people are going to be like, oh man, I'm not, that 1 hour of my life is not worth it.
Let alone the 4 hours, that some lines turn into.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be terrible. It really could.
Take the day off.
But you still got to do
talk
it.
to your boss, get the day off. And take some material to read. Take a backpack. Take water bottles, some books to read, some snacks.
Hand it out. Say, hey guys,
take a camping chair and sit in line and move it with you if you get tired.
Yeah.
I mean, just do whatever you need to do to make it work. What's that?
Be the first to vote. Take a sleeping bag.
That's right.
Before.
Yeah.
Now I would. Okay, one of my favorite Shakespeare speeches is the St. Crispin's Day speech in King Henry V. And I am going to play it because I don't dare read Shakespeare. People would stop listening right away.
Or stop watching Shakespeare.
It's a couple minutes long. Yeah. It's a couple minutes long, and I might even cut parts of it that are not part of the discussion. But it's worth listening to, and I think it's relevant here. And I'm going to go ahead and set it up now.
What's he that wishes so? My cousin Westmoreland? No, my fair cousin. If we are marked to die, we are enough to do our country loss. And if to live, the fewer men, the greater share of honour. God's will, I pray thee, wish not one man more. Rather proclaim it, Westmoreland, through my host, that he which hath no stomach to this feast, let him depart. His passport shall be drawn, and crowns for convoy put into his purse. We would not die in that man's company that fears his fellowship to die with us. This day is called the Feast of Crispian. He that outlives this day and comes safe home will stand a tiptoe when this day is named, and rouse him at the name of Crispian. He that shall live this day and see old age will yearly on the vigil feast his neighbours and say, tomorrow is St. Crispian. Then will he strip his sleeve and show his scars and say, these wounds I had on Crispin's day. Old men forget, yet all shall be forgot, but he'll remember with advantages what feats he did that day. Then shall our names, familiar in his mouth as household words, Harry the King, Bedford and Exeter, Warwick and Talbot, Salisbury and Gloucester, be in their flowing cups freshly remembered. This story shall the good man teach his son, and Crispian shall ne'er go by from this day to the ending of the world, but we in it shall be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers. For he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother, be he ne'er so base. And gentlemen in England now abed shall think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manhoods cheap, while any speaks that fought with us upon St. Crispin's day.
So, the reason I point this out is because I don't care. We've said it over and over again. All of these fights between the right and the left, they always boil down to abortion. Right now, this is a fight against abortion.
Yeah.
And number one, okay, I don't do a whole lot for the pro-life side. And I imagine all of you out there don't either, because not a lot of people do. But you could devote 1 hour every 4 years to the pro-life movement. And that's the very least you can do. And someday, this fight's going to be over. I don't know if this generation is going to win the fight, but eventually we'll win the fight, or the whole world will end. But I think the fight's going to end. I think we're going to win. And once we've won, and we talk about abortion the same way we talk about slavery
right.
we do now,
Yep.
Slavery or the Holocaust, aren't you going to be embarrassed to say that you couldn't even devote that 1 hour to vote for the right guy?
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, you're going to... Whenever someone talks about, like, the equality, the civil rights marches during the 60s, people wear that as kind of a badge of honor. And a lot of times, people who didn't take part in those marches lie about it. Because it's an embarrassment not to have marched.
Yeah, that they didn't do anything at all.
And they're jealous of people who did march. And you're going to be jealous of not being part of the group that ended abortion in America.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't even set one day aside to at least just go make sure that you're casting your vote the right way.
It is so serious, and it's going to affect so many lives. Don't be one of those people who embarrassingly say, yeah, I didn't vote. I had things to do. I had to work, or I had to, go to school or whatever. I don't care what it is. Take the day off. The only excuse you have is the kids that you got to watch your kids or something. Take them with you.
Yeah.
Make them stand in line. Make them witness history. I don't care what it is. You've got to get there that day and vote.
Now, many venues, you can vote early. Like, for example, in my county, they have multiple early voting days. It's the actual polls. I'm not talking about mail-in or anything like that. And you're not bound to the specific precinct you live in. Now, not all counties are like that. And so there's a lot that in order to vote, you really do have to go out on that day. But look it up in your county. If you need to pick a different day, go early, whatever, find out what the situation is if you need to make it convenient. But at least get out there.
I don't trust them.
You don't trust what?
I don't trust any of the... I don't trust the absentee ballots.
No, these aren't I'm not talking about absentee or mail-in or anything. I'm talking about physically going to the polls and voting. They just have multiple days. I mean, it's the same as any other voting. It's the same as the regular voting day.
No, it's not. No, it's not. On voting day, there's a bunch of people out there making sure that everything is handled legally. But nobody's there for 3 weeks before voting day to make sure that it's happening.
Well, they don't do it for 3 weeks. It might be like 5 days. And yeah, there's a lot of people there. I mean, it's first of all, you've got all the poll workers, some from each party and stuff like that. Although they're not there in a party capacity, and then you've got people standing. There's lines all the time.
Okay,
it's some counties do it.
I'm telling you this: the best way to keep the fraud at a minimum, which we already know there's going to be a lot of fraud. But the best way to keep it at a minimum is to get on there on the day we vote and vote. I think that's the most sure way of having your vote counted.
Yeah, I agree.
So if you can do it, do it.
And if you can't do it, find a way.
Yeah.
And I'll add one more thing. I gave you a packing list. I'll add one more thing. Take a rosary.
Definitely take a rosary because we could use the prayers. There's another argument that I personally used this argument for years, and that my vote doesn't really count for all that much. Now, a lot of people use that in the sense that it's one vote out of millions. I never really tried to use that. I think that's a total cop-out. But even if your vote is one vote out of millions, hey, if you're Catholic, you've got an obligation. I don't care if it's 1 in a million or 1 in 1. Your vote does count because every single vote is count. Now, for years, I was of the opinion that it doesn't really matter who we vote for because the same agendas keep moving forward. Whether we've got George W. Bush in or George H.W. Bush or Clinton or Obama, the same agendas keep moving forward. And when I said our vote doesn't count, that's really what I was talking about. But this is kind of a historic moment because for the first time, we've got a guy who's actually doing what he said he was going to do.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, even 4 years ago, it was a big question mark. It was a maybe factor. Hey, this guy's as an outsider. Once he gets in, he's just going to cave to the pressure. He's either going to do what the party demands or he's going to start doing whatever he needs to do. He'll become a politician and he'll start following one party line or the other. Maybe he'll turn liberal. I mean, nobody knew. But now we've got a track record. And and what we need as a country is 4 more years of this track record.
And
actually, we could use 40 more years of this track record. But
I don't know. If anyone can pull off really turning the country around inside of the next 4 years, it would be Trump. I mean, back when McCain was running against Obama, I didn't vote then. I didn't trust McCain any more than I trusted Obama. But this time, this is different. Your vote does count because him being in office does actually change what's going to happen. And it already has, and it needs to happen more.
Right.
You could argue that he really has not advanced certain agendas like abortion, and there's this problem with the COVID shutdown and things like that. And we'll get into each one of those as we move along. But you cannot argue that that he is just like every other politician. This is the one time where I would say you're completely wrong.
On this election, at this cusp, it really matters going forward significantly whether Trump wins or doesn't win. Now, I would say that whoever he's running against, that almost doesn't matter. It didn't matter whether it was Biden or another Hillary or Bernie Sanders. All of that kind of didn't matter. The whole Democratic nomination process didn't matter as much as whether or not Trump wins.
And we know for a fact that they cheated anyway. We know that Biden was not elected; he was selected. I mean, Bernie Sanders was winning, and then suddenly Biden's winning.
Yeah, Bernie kind of got the shaft. I mean, I don't like Bernie Sanders, but he kind of got shafted, didn't he?
I think what happened was that Biden agreed to the Bernie Sanders agenda in exchange for his votes, and Bernie backed down. And the thing is, if you're a Bernie Sanders fan, it's not like they beat him down. He backed down. He didn't fight. He could have fought that, and he didn't. Okay. So the number one reason for electing Trump is abortion. And we've said that a bunch of times, and we all know it. And now we're at a really unique point because there's an opening on the Supreme Court, and Trump has already elected or selected his nominee. Replacement. What was her name? Amy.
Amy Barrett.
I don't know if she's going to do the right thing or not, because we're seeing right and left that.
Yeah, that one of the things that we have learned is that when it comes to the Supreme Court, you never know ahead of time. Any justice you put on there, I mean, they could look like
Kavanaugh,
just a absolute diamond gem of a textualist, and end up, going.
Amy's got some judgments that I would disagree with concerning, for example, concerning the COVID shutdown and the way churches are not being respected as places of worship.
Right.
But it's the best we can do right now, and the more pro-life judges we have in place, the better this is going to go. Because he's probably going to replace one more. In the next 4 years, if we get him in there.
Quite possibly. I mean, in 4 years, one more, possibly two.
So, let's say Amy gets in, and then they have to vote on the abortion question. We might not win. But two more judges?
Probably
I think
not.
maybe we would.
Yeah.
Now, for people like us who are hardcore single-issue voters, the question of abortion might make someone not like Trump because he calls himself a pro-life judge or a pro-life president. And when he did this, and I remember the tweet, he mentioned the exceptions, the rape and incest and women's life in danger issue.
Yeah.
On the one hand, I would say that was political, but I don't think I don't think it's political in the sense that I need to say this so that certain people don't not vote for me. I don't think that's why he did it. Look, if you're stuck on voting for him because of that, you need to think in terms of practicality and what those exceptions would mean if they were actually part of the law. For example, what women's being in danger, the life endangerment issue. That's almost irrelevant nowadays. But if a doctor has to go to court to prove that the woman's life was in danger, if that's the procedure, then it's not going to be used. Doctors do not want to spend all their time in court unless you've got a doctor who specifically only does abortions. But even then, they would spend so much time in court defending their actions that I don't think that would be used. If they have to prove that the woman's life is in danger, I don't see it being an issue. I would let it be on the law. I wouldn't care if it's on the law, as long as the doctor has to prove it.
And if it has teeth. In other words, make it a defense claim, like self-defense.
Right.
Like, for example, if I kill a guy in self-defense, that has to be a defense claim on my part. Hey, a homicide happened at your hand. By default, you're liable for that, and you're liable for prosecution. Right. You have to assert the defense of self-defense in order for either the DA or any point along the line of the justice system to say, okay, we're going to go ahead and terminate the prosecution at this point and not prosecute you. Make it that kind of a thing.
If that's how it's set up in the law, then doctors don't want to go through that. They just want to practice, most of them. Not the abortion doctors. They're not real doctors anyway.
Right. Yeah. A lot of abortion doctors aren't even doctors. And you know what? Here's if as a Catholic, I mean, who do you look for if you're a Catholic, a real Catholic, by which I mean a staunchly pro-life Catholic who's aware of the issues and the movements and the organizations and the people who are involved. I mean, who are the kind of people that you look to in terms of, okay, yeah, he's a guy who's really out there, who's saying what needs to be said. You're looking at people like Father Paul Marks of Human Life International, Father Frank Pavone for Priest for Life. Father Frank Pavone is absolutely behind Trump and supports it. And he says we must have Donald Trump for the next 4 years. So don't just take it from us. I mean, the guys who are really in the vanguard of this fight are saying this.
Taylor Marshall, he's on the Catholics
he's
for
another
Trump.
One. Actually, he's on the Trump Catholics for Trump board, isn't he?
Okay, the other exception often cited is rape and incest. Obviously, I don't think a woman should be allowed to have an abortion just because she's raped or just because it's incest. And also, we should point out that the incest we're talking about here actually is rape. I mean,
you're just talking about rape in both cases. That
now, if that's an exception, let's say we pass a law, the only time you can get an abortion is if the woman's life is in danger, which means the doctor's going to have to show, hey, yes, this woman's life really was in danger.
Yeah, positive medical reasons.
We can talk. Right. I'm going to bring that up again in a second. But or that this woman was raped either by a date or in a back alley somewhere or by her uncle, and so she wanted to have an abortion. Think of what that means in terms of practicality. A woman who is pregnant by her uncle or father has to go to the abortion mill and say, I want an abortion, or the hospital, or however it's set up.
Well, that's the other thing I was going to say. If we got it down to that point, there would not be abortion mills and there would not be abortion rooms in hospitals. It would be a surgery in an OR. Yeah.
So she goes to the doctor and says, I was raped by my father. Now, what does that mean to the doctor? Oh, my gosh, this guy's raping his daughter.
He's got to report it.
That's got to be reported.
Yeah.
Or this uncle or some guy in a back alley. We need to find this guy. He's a rapist.
Yeah, right now, the law doesn't require them any, reporting or anything like that. Right now, it's like, okay, come on up, we'll take care of it, boom, you're done.
So even if we say that a bunch of abortions are because of rape or incest, which they're not, but let's say those stats were true, and there are a bunch of them, well, somebody's getting away with all this stuff, and it's got to be handled. It's got to be taken care of.
Yeah.
So in terms of actually using that as an excuse to have an abortion, it's just not going to happen. Because Uncle Rick is not going to send his niece to the doctor to have an abortion, because now suddenly it's become a thing where she has to tell him.
She has to explain why now.
And that means he's going to jail. So it's not going to be used to have more abortions. That's why I say I'm all for having those exceptions on the law books. I don't think they should. I don't think abortion should happen.
Now, ontologically, we agree that ontologically it doesn't justify the abortion.
But let it be on there.
But pragmatically, it almost doesn't matter.
So, back to the medical issue. There are certain cases. Well, let's say a tubal pregnancy. A woman with a tubal pregnancy is going to die if the what is it at that stage? It's not a zygote.
The embryonic, the embryo
Okay.
that implanted in her fallopian
Yeah,
tube isn't
it has
removed.
to be removed.
The implantation. Isn't
Otherwise,
removed.
the woman dies. That's not really an abortion.
Yeah.
You're not trying to kill the baby. You're trying to remove the embryo. It does result in the baby's death.
Right.
But that's not the purpose of the surgery.
Yeah.
And in that case, it is morally acceptable to do that. If a woman is actually going to die if she doesn't have an abortion, then it's not really an abortion. You're taking the fetus out
right.
of the uterus.
It's because of a condition something went wrong. Yeah, and the condition is being removed. Now, if we ever develop technology that would allow because for an ectopic pregnancy, it has to, in order to even be discovered, it has to proceed along to a certain point. But if we were able to ever develop technology that allowed an embryo in that case to be moved out of where it's implanted in the fallopian tube and to somehow induce a implantation where it belongs in the woman's womb,
Yeah.
then in those cases, we would be required by Catholic moral teachings and principles to pursue that.
Right.
But we don't have that now.
Right now, all we can do is remove the embryo, and of course the embryo dies, which is not the purpose of it. So
Right.
in a case where a woman's life really is going to end if she doesn't remove the fetus or embryo, then it's not against Catholic moral teaching to do that. But it doesn't really happen now because not other than the case we just talked about, because we're good enough to
honestly, in all the cases where that does happen, it can't be done in an abortion mill anyway. It has to be done in a surgical operating room. So, I mean, again, we're talking about surgery here.
All right, let's move on to one of the big ones, and this is why someone like us would kind of decide, no, I'm not going to vote for him. And there's two issues.
Okay.
His handling of the COVID-19 virus and the riots. And they kind of run into each other. But I guess we'll talk about COVID-19 first. I've criticized on here his handling of it. Although, I don't know. I guess let's start at the beginning back in January when he was tweeting about it back then, and he had that normal Trump positive tone where he said, okay, this is happening in China. We're doing this and this to make sure this doesn't happen. And Xi is doing a great job over there, but we're going to make sure to protect Americans. And then...
Yeah, he stopped the travel from China.
That's the first thing he did. No more travel for China. They're doing great. We're doing great. We're going to make sure it doesn't come here. And that's what he said. That's what he did. When he did that, every other politician poo-pooed him and said...
Criticized.
Yeah, they were all talking... I think...
Including Biden, by the way.
They wanted people to go out and hug Chinamen for some reason. It was kind of bizarre. It was weird.
That's gross. That's gross.
Pelosi was saying go party at the New Year's thing on Chinatown or whatever, and someone else had said something like find a Chinaman and hug him today, something like that. It was weird. He's got advisors, and they're telling him one thing, and he knows what he's seeing. And he's seeing the same thing we're all seeing. He's seeing that in other parts of the world, there's a strange virus, seems to be killing more old people than young people. And it seems to be spreading pretty quickly. And it's hospitalizing a lot of older people. That's what he's being told. That's what he's seeing. Now, they're telling him, shut the nation down. What you got to understand is that he never actually shut the nation down.
No, exactly. And I mean, he, as a matter of law, doesn't have the power to do that.
So what he did is talk to all the governors And he seemed to be for the notion of shutting down the states for, I think originally we said 2 weeks. It had a very specific purpose. The hospitals are about to get overrun, and we need to stop that from happening because the hospitals are not prepared for that many people, all needing respirators.
Right.
That's what we were told.
And in the meantime, he moved mountains to get the hospitals the equipment that they would need to handle the theoretical onslaught of, respirators.
So
and
many
things
people
like that.
forget that point or don't see it because it was actually hidden from them by the media or by the governors.
Yeah, it's not like Trump was out there, he throws his tweets out every once in a while and stuff, but it's not like he's out there calling a news crew every time he does something to accomplish something for the common good. He's too busy working for that to bother calling news people.
Yeah, he stepped up the manufacturing of things like respirators and masks, and he was not just him, but the American people were betrayed by a lot of American companies like 3M. He had a contract with 3M. They were supposed to deliver a bunch of masks, and suddenly they didn't deliver them. And he said, "Where the hell are our masks?" And then he found out they had sent them to China. I think that's what happened.
Oh man, that's a big one. China bought. They went around the world buying up all the masks, and now all the masks that everybody's buying to wear now are coming from China.
So, and it
makes you scratch your head.
Places like New York, he sent Navy ships to places and created giant military medical complexes to handle whatever people needed. And they were...
like COVID mass units
they
or
were
something.
Unused. They didn't get used.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, not billions, but millions of dollars spent creating these... centers like taking I don't know, like venues, like concert venues or sports venues, and turning them into these big centers. And then
the Duke Convention Center here
going
in Cincinnati,
unused.
That was set up to be a medical center. It was never used. None of it ever.
Yeah, that's same story in multiple cities across the United States. The whole, and then you've got the news reporting as though it's dire numbers. Things like, ICU at this hospital running it at 87% or something like that. Capacity. Not bothering to report that normal, the norm for these ICUs is more like around 96%.
They try to keep them almost
like
at 100%. That's how they design the hospitals, so that there's always that they're always full. That's how the hospitals make money.
That's why if you go into the ER, you might be in one of those little, curtain-drawn rooms in the ER, for 18 hours before you can actually get into a room.
They're set up that way. That's how they make money. And so if they're filled to capacity, that's good. But guess what?
Yeah,
thousands of hospitals were well below capacity because they stopped seeing people. And a lot of people died instead of going to the hospital. We don't have numbers about
out
this,
of fear.
But,
I don't want to go to the hospital. That's where all the COVID patients are.
Anyway, that'll get me off on another tangent because the whole thing bothered me so much. Because from the start, I thought...
Okay, but we're talking about Trump's handling
I thought the way to handle it would be to not shut down for 2 weeks, to go ahead and open up for 2 weeks and work harder.
Ramp up American manufacturing of the stuff we need to handle.
That's what I thought we should have done.
That's what we should have done. I mean, why not? There's how many craft beer bottling places are there throughout the United States? Why couldn't we have said, hey guys, we will make federal funds available to you to manufacture, bottle, and send out hand sanitizer?
Well, they did. A lot of them did.
I mean, what, craft beer places? Actually,
a lot of microbreweries
you know what? Come to think of it,
making hand sanitizer.
Okay, well, in that case, that goes further to my point. But that's the kind of thing that we as Americans should expect to do. We roll up our sleeves, we get it done. And we should have had that outlook through the entire thing.
But instead, Trump kind of agreed to, okay, let's shut down for a couple weeks to flatten the curve. Remember that? Flatten the curve.
Yep, I remember. Flatten the curve for 2 weeks.
So we flattened the curve.
Which turned into 4
it ends
months.
up there was no curve.
All summer, doggone
We pretty much
long.
had a flat line. There was no curve.
Yeah.
They keep playing with the numbers.
People laid off. Businesses gone under.
Every day,
small businesses.
I hear about the number of cases going up. I hear about the number of deaths going up. But honestly, how many people do you personally know who had trouble with COVID-19? I know more people who died because of the laws and the restrictions concerning COVID-19 than who died from COVID-19.
Yeah.
I know there's 2 people just in our extended family who died because of the COVID-19 restrictions.
Yeah, not because of COVID-19, but because of the reaction to it. The insane reaction to it.
The laws that Mike DeWine made, they weren't even laws. They were orders.
I was going to say let's even be careful and let's just call it what it is when it comes to these governors. They're not laws. They're
like executive orders for the state.
Presumptions. They're governor executive orders, and they're presumptions of power, which if they were challenged constitutionally and we could get a few of these all the way to the Supreme Court, I think we'd find that a lot of them are being, would end up being, oh no, you weren't allowed to do that. But the thing is, by the time that happens, it's all going to be passed anyway. But the things these governors are doing, I mean, the emergency powers these governors have are in place to allow the governors to do things like coordinate personnel and that kind of stuff in order to handle emergencies. They're not meant to give them legislative powers over what Americans are allowed to do. And what the citizens of their states are allowed to do and not do. That it's not that kind of power, and every governor who's out there presuming to do that is probably violating the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of his state.
Every single time the murderer Mike DeWine was challenged in court, he lost. Every single time. And he still keeps his thumb down on our state and keeps twisting and twisting.
People should ignore him.
I wish I ignore him. I wish other people would. But I couldn't ignore him and go to the nursing home to see my aunt, who was...
because they wouldn't let you in.
I couldn't.
And she died. Most probably, I mean, okay, by this time, she probably would have passed
she
away.
had another 3 months, maybe.
Yeah,
but it turned into 1.5 weeks.
She did not have to die
and
when she
didn't
did.
have to die
that
alone
was because of the restrictions.
Scared, not understanding
without family.
Why she was there. She thought she was in prison.
Yeah, there's no way that she understood why nobody was coming to see her.
She thought she had been abandoned by everyone. And the nursing homes, I don't know if people really understand how bad nursing homes are in America right now. They are very bad. They are killing people. Vicky talked to a guy who delivers medical equipment to these nursing homes. And Vicky was angry because they had done some certain things, like left her in the shower. And this was supposed to be one of the better nursing homes. And this guy who delivers medical equipment says, you don't understand. It doesn't matter. They look nice. They're private ones, public ones. It doesn't matter. They're all the same. They don't have enough people, and they won't pay their people enough to care. And people are dying right and left because of negligence. And that's a whole other subject again. But
it is. But the bottom line is, Trump could have pushed the governors the other way. He could have.
And after 2 weeks, he did start pushing. He said, hey, we got to open up again. We can't just stay shut down.
Guys, we got to open this. And boy, oh my, the flack
he's going to kill people. He's going to kill 2 million people. Oh my gosh. The idiotic predictions that were made, they were just stupid.
Yeah, nonsense.
And the fact is, again, it's the governors doing it. He cannot control the governors. All the governors who opened up completely had great results. And all the governors who are still shut down 4 months later are having terrible results economically.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess he could declare martial law. He could do that, but I don't think this is a situation where he should.
But how would that? I mean, first of all, it wouldn't really. I mean, the real powers regarding that would have to do more with things like insurrections and stuff like that. But how would that even work? Declaring martial law. It's okay. We're going to send in the army to make sure that the county board of liquor licensing doesn't revoke the licenses of the bars that open. Stuff like it is not even clear how it would work. So,
and he's been pushing for the schools to open up. He's been pushing for businesses to open up.
What I don't get is why he didn't fire Dr. Fauci.
I think it's a Trump thing. Trump will not admit to a past mistake. Oh. He just won't.
It's just this is what we're doing going forward. But it could be.
I don't know if firing Dr. Fauci would have helped at all anyway.
Would have made it different. Yeah,
he said, "Well, okay, I'm encouraging people to shut down for 2 weeks," and that's what he did. After those 2 weeks, what did Dr. Fauci matter? I mean, Dr. Fauci wasn't making changes in the states. The governors were doing that. And Dr. Fauci would have kept talking.
That's true.
Because he was getting a microphone and all the media was focused on him and he was loving it. Him being hired by Trump wouldn't have mattered. Here's the thing. We're thinking about it the way we think about it. There's still a group of people out there who think that COVID-19 is
he should have shut down more.
I don't know what to say to those people. Look,
Yeah, the second panic is still in play. I've always said COVID-19 is two panics.
Yeah.
There's the panic over the virus. That's the first panic, which is itself a real panic and is much more dangerous than the virus itself. And then there's the panic over appearing to have not acted regarding the virus. And that's where the governors come in, and a lot of the governors succumbed to that panic.
I think maybe that's what happened in the beginning.
That's why I call it a panic.
I think a lot of these governors are just enjoying the power. Look.
Yeah, that's scary to think.
Governor DeWine, look, he's a wuss, and he didn't stand up for the rights of Ohioans. But we're 4 months into this. We know about the virus now. He's not worried about appearing to care. He knows he personally caused the death of many people, especially old people, especially people who are at an age where they would have voted for Trump. He caused those deaths personally.
But,
So, and I also know that he's going to try to stop us from voting. I'd bet my left arm on that.
What do you think? He's going to try to shut down the polls?
He did do the primary.
Make it so that it's onerous by saying everybody has to stay 6 feet apart?
He shut down the primaries. And how many...
did he?
Apparently there was a vote. I didn't know about it. And maybe it was like an absentee, but I don't know what it was. But something happened, and a bunch of issues got voted through that shouldn't have been voted through.
Oh, wow.
I think he's going to try to stop us from voting. I really do. And I think a lot of Democrat governors are definitely going to try that.
Looking for the same, looking to try that.
I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. The thing is, Trump is doing everything he can to, number one, calm the nation, because the nation is panicked right now, and they're panicking needlessly. Number two, to try to get the economy moving again. He can only do so much. He can't force the governors to open up. Which brings us to the riots. Because the riots...
To what? Oh, right.
Look, these riots flare up, and the second the National Guard is called in, they die down again. There was the beginning of something here in Ohio, and I will give DeWine credit. He shut it down. It was in Columbus. I think he had the National Guard out there that day, and it was shut down. Louisville started flaring up the last week, and that was shut down. Or this week. It was a couple days ago. Over the... what was the girls?
The lack of indictment for the police officers.
Breonna Taylor's
what's her name?
Death. He shut that down. He's still allowing way too much, but Trump can only help if he's invited to by the governors. Now,
he can send in federal troops to protect specifically federal properties, but that's all.
Yeah. Trump can only take action when invited to by the governors. Now, let's talk about in Portland. He decides, all right, we've had it. I'm going to send in the military. You have to understand that then he's instructing his military to march against Americans, which is the last thing he wants to do. But there's another problem involved with this, and I don't know if people really understand the severity of it. He has generals refusing to do what they're told.
Oh, right. Which is never a good situation.
So before he really decides, all right, I need to take control of the country back, it needs to be a severe enough problem to where he can get rid of the generals who are going to do this. And we know some generals are going to do it. Mm-hmm. He's got to get control of the military before he tries to use the military. I don't know if people really understand how that would play off if he told the military, okay, you need to round up these people, and then the generals in charge of that military said, no, we're not going to do it. That's a rebellion. And he can't make that move until he's ready. And as long as he's got the generals that are in place right now, that can't happen. I think he is moving on that, though. I think he's preparing because I think he knows that things are going to get a little bit more serious after the election, after he wins and they try to steal it from him. But I guess we'll have to wait and see. But as far as the riots go, yes, cities are burning. Trump cannot do anything about it. He doesn't have the power, not without the governors. Another issue is the fact that he's not Catholic. I think if you're not going to vote for him because he's not Catholic, I don't know. You're shutting your eyes because it's not like Biden's really Catholic. I mean, the guy's a monster.
Yeah.
I don't think that's an issue for anyone. The border.
Yeah. You know what? Catholics need to be, regardless of, in fact, I would almost say that this is one area where I would say American bishops, I think it's most of the bishops throughout the world, but especially American bishops. This is one area where American bishops are being supremely irresponsible. As Catholics, we need to support borders. We need to support the idea that borders matter and that the rules of border crossings ought to be enforced. The lack of strong borders is the primary enablement for human trafficking.
And drug trade. Yeah.
And drug trade. Yeah, I mean, if you want to talk, so many people want to say, oh, yeah, gosh, Trump, okay, he's anti-abortion, but is he really pro-life? I mean, look, he wants strong borders. You know what? Strong borders are pro-life.
Yeah.
Loose borders are anti-life, people.
You know what? Touching on that, because he's also called a xenophobe a lot because of how he reacts to other countries and how he reacts to those people coming to America. And I would point something out, and this leaks into another subject, which is the military complex. Over the past, I think going all the way back to Vietnam, we have started these little wars all over the world. We have American military bases all over the world, many of which are in active battle. And the wars that we're in really aren't in our best interest. What they are is a way to make money for contractors, for generals, for a lot of people. And he's putting a stop to that, first of all. Second of all,
Yeah.
I would just, when it comes to his pro-life stance and someone claiming that he's only pro-life for abortion, I would point to that little event that took place with Iran where they blew up a drone. Do you remember that? It was a drone that was like a $200 million drone, and Iran hit it with something and blew it up. And this is just after Trump issuing a warning to Iran not to take any kind of military action against Americans.
Interfere, right.
So they blow up the drone, and everybody in the world is holding their breath because they think Trump's going to drop the bomb on them.
Launch a war.
And he has this press conference, and he said, we had this plan, this attack plan. He said, I asked the general, okay, how many people are going to die in this? And he said, 200 people are going to die in this one attack. And he said, I don't think so. They didn't kill any people. They just shot down one of our planes. And $200 million is not worth any human life. This was his reasoning for not attacking Iran. I don't think any other president would have ever said something like that.
What? Yeah, I mean, Barack Obama wouldn't have reasoned that way. Bill Clinton wouldn't have reasoned that way. That's for sure.
He bombed aspirin factories to draw attention away from Monica Lewinsky.
Yeah.
Trump was unwilling to attack a country that we already see as our enemy because he wasn't going to get revenge on an attack against our equipment by taking human life. You can't tell me that's not a serious pro-life position.
Yeah. I mean, he's the commander-in-chief. He could have ordered it, and there are lots of people who would have lined up to justify it. And
even his base would have been fine with it. If he had attacked Iran, I would have been fine with it. But I absolutely admire him even more for taking that stance now.
That's a good point. Yeah. Those who try to claim that he's only anti-abortion, he's not really pro-life. They really don't have a leg to stand on.
He's 100% pro-life. And then, incidentally, this wasn't a weakness. This was because the next day he issued another warning to Iran and said something to the effect that if one human life is attacked by you, if you guys end one human life, one American life, I will come down on you like you wouldn't believe. And I think the next week Iran attacked this base, but they arranged it so that there were no Americans in the base. He is serious about attacking if he has to attack. But he values human life. That's all there is to it. But also, concerning the border, there's also the argument that he promised us a wall and we don't have a wall.
Well, not for lack of his trying.
He has been building a wall.
We've got a lot more of a wall than we started with.
He's done a lot more than any other president has. They fought him every step of the way. Even what he has built has been fought. And they're trying to hide the miles that he's put in already because the media knows how much people wanted that wall. And they figure if they can make the case that there is no wall, then maybe his base will back off. I think that might be working for some people, or I'm afraid it's working for some people.
Really?
Well,
the people backing off
think
the
a lot
support
of people
for
are
him
saying,
because
where's
they
the wall?
feel like he failed
Where's
on
the
that
wall?
promise?
Why, when I go downtown Cincinnati, why are there 20 Mexicans down there working for in these day labor jobs, taking jobs against Cincinnatians?
All right, people. Yeah, okay, guys. You've got immigrants in all of your cities. It's not like these people commute every day from Mexico into Cincinnati or Chicago or wherever. If you're thinking that that's a failed promise. That he didn't make good, at least to the best of his effort there, just because you're seeing immigrants in your city. Come on, wake up.
I would also add
those were
there
already
was
there.
a failure on the part of the voters. We allowed the Democrats to take the House,
Control the House,
and that
which is where appropriations
that slowed him
begin.
down a lot.
Yep.
I mean, that's why we got the impeachment.
Let's give him the House back for the next 4 years.
Give him the House back, and heck, let's give him a supermajority.
And keep the Senate. Yeah.
If you're disappointed in the progress of the wall, I don't know what to say. He's doing everything he can, and it is getting done. Another big thing is the spending. I know Trump spends a lot. He spends a lot of money we just don't have. I mean, they're printing money right now with these.
I know. That's that, and I've had some heartburn myself about some of his like some of the stimulus stuff during the COVID layoffs and stuff like that.
Well, a couple things. First of all, I think with the stimulus bills, like, he was backed into a corner here. The governors are not going to let up. They're hurting American people, and he's doing everything in his power to help those people. But he can't do everything. And if this is one way to temporarily alleviate some of the pressure that people have on him.
He's kind of in his relationship with the governors over this whole COVID lockdown thing. And he doesn't do stuff unilaterally. I mean, the money has to be approved by, bills and laws and stuff like that he can't just do it himself. But here's the thing. With the governors, he's kind of like in the position of you take a couple and then they get divorced, and then you've got the one parent and they've got kids, and you've got the one parent who is always over-promising and then under-delivering, and the other parent who doesn't want to see the kids get hurt as a result of the first parent's irresponsibility and selfishness, and so they're always trying to make up for it.
Yeah.
And that's the position he's in. And we're the kids. That's kind of what's going on here with Trump and these governors.
He has Americans and America's best interests at heart here. But I would point out a couple other things that I don't think this is on the table. I don't think he's talked about it, but I see a couple things that might be happening here. Number one, he's been saying for the start that we have to quit manufacturing everything in China. We got to make it here.
Yeah.
So he got a lot of manufacturing jobs moved back to America.
Yeah, he's been working hard at that.
The problem is the manufacturers come here and they're like, well, nobody will come to work. Especially now because everybody's getting paid to stay home.
Now with the shutdowns.
But
right. Even
before the shutdown, manufacturers were having problems getting people to work. Now, the economics plays into this because they have to make their product cheap enough for people to afford, which means they can only pay their workers a certain amount of money. And I don't even pretend to know enough about economics to say exactly how that would play out. But if suddenly there were a bunch of people out of work, the manufacturers would have people to work.
That's true. As long as being out of work is, a disadvantage to being at work. And with things like an extra $600 a week in federal COVID layoff relief, it kind of makes that a little more difficult to make it happen.
But that's going to be running out. It's like, for example, the state unemployment is going to be running out for a lot of people soon. They might extend that.
That's true. The $600 is only available if you're eligible for your state's unemployment.
And then the federal unemployment, I think, went down to $400, and I imagine that'll be taken away sooner or later.
Oh, is it? Yeah, hopefully that'll scale down anyway. But, here's the other thing. This is actually the so-called conservative Republican never-Trumpers. You've brought us into the subject that is really at the heart of the never-Trumper Republican crowd, and it's this, that he wants America to be a manufacturing industrial country. And they are tied to the cheap labor and cheap products.
That really
China.
is it. That is at the very heart of it. Not just the financially, but a lot of power brokers are tied to China.
Yeah.
They get their money from China. I heard who's that guy's name? Dwayne Johnson, The Rock. He came out against Trump because he gets paid by China. His market in China is bigger than it is in America. And a lot of sports people.
Yeah, I was reading it's the I don't know if you get it, but the Hillsdale College publication in Primus. And okay, so Jason Whitlock, sports columnist, was delivered a speech or something like that, and so they adapted his speech for print, and he was discussing how the NBA is practically just, Nike practically owns the NBA. The NBA is more like the marketing arm of Nike, and Nike is so tied deeply with China that China runs the NBA for all intents and purposes. And that's why you've got these players who are just absolutely not going to do anything to make their Chinese overlords unhappy.
Yeah, exactly. Look, Nike is anti-American. They have been for a long time. And by extension, so is the NBA.
Anybody Chinese is anti-American. Here's the other thing. I don't know how many people really quite realize this. China is not just anti-American. The Chinese government really believes, look at what America has done. When America goes and gets involved in other parts of the world that we shouldn't be involved in. Okay, yeah, there's a lot of it that's involved in business and that kind of stuff. But geopolitically, we're out there trying to get other places to work the way we work. We go to Iraq, Iran, and so on and so forth. It's like, hey, guys, set up a democracy. Run yourselves this way. No, we have no business doing that, okay, in these other places. They've got to figure it out for themselves. But we're never out to say, let's establish a permanent puppet government so that you'll be under American control. Let's just make you an arm of America, and you take your orders from our Congress, and we'll set up your laws and so on and so on.
Yeah, we don't
never
colonize.
Do that. It's always we try to get them to do things the way we do, which again is inappropriate. But I don't know how many people realize the Chinese government has as its goal to be specifically in charge of the entire world. China wants to rule the world with one government, theirs. Not just everybody work like China and act like China and be like China. They want everybody to be China.
And I don't think most people understand quite how bad it is there. It's a communist regime in every sense of the word. Every person is a ward of the state.
It's that you can go back to all the 50s and 40s paranoia literature and propaganda films about what it means to live under Chinese rule, and the worst exaggerations of those doesn't even quite convey how bad it really is.
It's weird how people don't get that.
And I think too few people realize that.
Everything you do every day under communist rule, you wouldn't do that. Anything that you take joy in, you wouldn't have that. Things are getting a little tight because of COVID. Well, I think I might start doing this for money and maybe open up a branch here and try to pull in money this way. I couldn't do that under a communist regime. I do exactly every day.
Everybody out there, all you liberals out there, okay, our listeners probably aren't liberals, but, maybe some of you could go play our podcast for a few liberals, at least this part. All of you liberals out there who somehow have gotten the idea that Trump is out to be like a dictator or something like that. When you're out writing your articles accusing Trump of being dictatorial and saying how much of a Nazi he is and how much he, wants the government to be, run like Nazis and so on and so forth, do you even for 1 second while you're writing your article look over your shoulder and think, oh my gosh, should I actually press send? I mean, are they going to descend on me? Do I need to worry about what's going to happen to my family? You know what? In China, people do have that.
Yeah, nobody writes against Xi. I mean, you die if you do that. You get killed.
Yeah, I mean, the people who are doing that are
There's
very
not even
underground.
a trial or anything. You're just killed.
Or disappeared into a prison somewhere or whatever.
The Gulag. Go back to Russia and Anyway, but my thought is, what if he's okay with? This is terrible to say. I don't think it actually happens this way. But what if he's okay with a lot of people being out of work for the purpose of providing workers so that we can start to manufacture again? Maybe that's a stretch.
What if that's just a providential side effect of the bad decisions by all these governors?
Yeah. Well,
let's go ahead and accept that for what it is. Okay, it's bad, and the governors are responsible for the losses of livelihoods that have resulted. But if the end result is to turn America back into a solid nation industrially, then that's Providence bringing good out of bad.
Another thing with the spending is that I don't know enough about economics to really talk on this, but I remember since I was a kid, everybody complaining about the Federal Reserve, about how we don't have gold backing the dollar, things like that.
Yeah, a lot of that's like the what's his name who was
Condit.
James Condit was big on Jim Condit was big on that. But no, I'm thinking about there was a politician in the last couple decade or so who was like that, talking a lot about that. Was Pat Buchanan in that camp too? Yeah, I mean, a lot of that really is that kind of misses the point. That's kind of a red herring economically. That the whole gold backing thing and whether it's backed and that kind of stuff.
I sometimes wonder though, because Trump has for a long time talked about the fact that China can manipulate the U.S. dollar, and he's been complaining about this for 30 years. And I sometimes wonder if he's okay with the spending because he knows that eventually, everybody predicts with all this spending, it's going to become a problem eventually. It's going to crash something. I don't understand how that works. But I wonder if he's of the mind that it's okay that it crashes while I'm on guard because I'll rebuild it the right way.
Could be, but here's the danger of that. So for the government, in order to spend money, it has to get the money somehow. And predominantly, a healthy government gets its money through taxes and spends what it has, okay? But when a government is engaged in deficit spending, like think back towards World War II and World War I even, that kind of stuff. What does the government do? They issue what are called bonds, okay? And a bond is an instrument that says, okay, we're going to, you give us $50 now, and over the course of the next 30 years, your bond instrument will increase by a certain percent each year. And if you wait long enough, 30 years, then that bond will now be worth, let's say, $100. And so you can turn it back in and take your $100. So that's how the government spends money. It has to somehow acquire the money as debt. Now, what's the problem? And this is where, maybe you could step in, a president, or not by himself, but, with the right laws, could step in and keep this from happening. But what's going on is a lot of these bonds are being bought by China. And that's the danger. So what happens is, as we spend more and more and more, and then eventually we have to pay back that spending plus interest, but who do we owe it to? We owe it to other governments often. Now, that was once a concern. I mean, that was a concern, as I heard it described to me back in the 80s. Okay. I don't know whether the structure of stuff is still that way today, whether there have been some safeguards put in place to keep that from happening or not. But that's, as I understand it, the really big concern. Now, in terms of and that's what they call the national debt, the debt that our government treasury owes to other entities. Now, to the extent that the bonds are sold only to Americans, well, then our government simply owes us that national debt. It's not quite as big a deal then.
Yeah.
And the better our economy comes, the better the government is able to pay that debt back.
There are rumors that Trump plans to end the Federal Reserve.
That wouldn't be a bad thing. I mean, the Federal Reserve was developed in, you know what? Was it the late 19th century or was it the next time around? Okay. It was established in 1913, Federal Reserve Act. So it was before the Great Depression of the 30s, but it was in response to a couple of sort of broad bank failures starting in the late 19th century, maybe even like the 1870s and the 1890s. And it was put in place in order to try to create a central reserve of money on which American banks could draw, that itself would then through a couple of specific mechanisms, be able to regulate, not regulate in a strict sense, but regulate in a soft sense, to influence is a better word, the value of the dollar, in a way to make sure, that the economy, was maintained nicely, and that banks themselves didn't go under. They would have rules in place about how much banks could borrow versus how much banks had on hand versus how much banks could lend, and so on and so forth. But there is a lot of, one of the things is that the Federal Reserve itself is run by people who themselves are not elected officials, which in some ways, look at how the politics of the country goes with elections and the election cycles and that kind of stuff. Think if the overall economy was as volatile as politics. All right, you probably don't want them being elected officials. But there are other aspects of the Federal Reserve that you could look at and say, okay, you know what? Maybe it's not so good that the Federal Reserve has all of this specific influence and they get to just decide monetary policy for the United States at large and that kind of stuff. Maybe it would be better if every time banks went through a round of failures, they came up with new mechanisms of transparency and so forth that they shared with each other in order to simply instill more confidence, and that the banks who followed the mechanisms, people would have more confidence in, and they would be more successful. And the banks who didn't,
be gone.
They would eventually succumb to market pressure and either fail out or adopt the better ways of doing business. And in fact, that's one of the things that every time we go through a round of depressions, problems, failures, and so forth, I've noticed that we've never when it comes to banking and large economic entities, we've never quite had the fortitude to say, let's go ahead and give the free market a chance to see what's really going to happen. Instead, we've always come down with a new set of government regulations. Well, so far to date, those regulations have not prevented bad things from happening. So I'm not, personally, I'm not convinced that we wouldn't be better off if we had avoided the broad federal regulations and allowed these various economic entities to figure stuff out themselves.
Well, I don't know enough about it, but I do hear that Trump hates the Federal Reserve, or at least he hates what they do, and he criticizes it constantly. But I guess we'll wait and see on that one. I'm just saying, as far as spending goes, we have a lot bigger problems than spending, and I've heard people complain about government spending since I was a kid. And everybody keeps saying that it's going to get so bad that this happens, and that never happens. So if the government just decided to spend and keep spending, which they have, and they keep spending more and more and more, which they have, what kind of impact would that have on my daily life? So far, it hasn't had any.
In fact, even when they come up with these crises, okay, so they got the spending, and then each year they also have to approve the budget, which decides how much money they're going to spend and how they're going to spend it. Well, what happens once in a while? They can't agree on a budget. And so the government, in theory, has to shut down.
The federal part shut down.
And there are a lot of governments that, there are a lot of federal workers, rather, that end up getting furloughed and stuff like that. It's like, well, you know what? Overall, would it be a bad thing if that sort of became permanent? Maybe some of these, federal
really
workers. And, my wife worked for a long time for the VA. And she said, the stereotype of, I don't care, and I'm going to sit here and do what I can to do as little work as possible during my day, government worker. That stereotype is not an exaggeration, and it is not atypical.
Yeah, I know.
If we had people who were actually dedicated to their jobs, we could run every function of the government that we have today on 1/5 of the workforce that we have.
Think about it this way. What if the entire government was run the way the BMV?
A business is run.
Everybody hates the BMV. It's DMV in some states.
Yeah.
But where you go to get your driver's license, just you got to get through the day understanding that that's how the whole government's run. It's that bad. If it were a business, it would be out of business. So
exactly.
If we ended the BMV and did something else, would that really be such a bad thing? Okay. The only other part is, the only thing I came up with was healthcare. Trump promised us an end to Obamacare and a replacement. He didn't give us the replacement.
But you know what he did? He got rid of the individual mandate.
We don't have to buy Obamacare.
Which was the single biggest thing, the problem with Obamacare. But we don't have a replacement yet. There's no way we're going to get a replacement as long as we've got a Democrat-controlled either house of the legislature.
He did have something.
The Senate or the House of
Representatives. He did have something. He tried to get... we had the House, we had the Senate, and we had the presidency, and he had something in place. One guy messed that up. I don't know how good it was. I don't know if it was a whole lot better than Obamacare, but...
I don't think... Here's one of the... This is one of those things that, unfortunately, the whole national hive mind, even among conservatives, except for a few examples here and there, a few exceptions here and there, rather, is not going to go where I am. I don't feel like we need a federal solution to health insurance or health care, period. I would scrap health care laws on a federal level. Let the states work it out. Every state can be its own petri dish for experimentation. and we'll find the best solutions, and then the other states can emulate those.
Yeah. I don't have a whole lot to add to that because I think I don't know what to say.
But
about
the president, nor his advisors, nor, like I said, most of the country is going to go there. So I can't expect the president or any president to go where I think it should really go in terms of health care.
But he did try to come up with a solution, and
he tried.
I think he thought we had it. We all thought we had it, and this was back when, for some reason, a lot of Republicans thought Trump was going down because of this whole Russia thing.
Oh,
they didn't trust him.
The Russia, and there's people who still actually believe that there's something there.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's the dead parrot Democrats.
It's all there. It's all proven.
So, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. Okay, so all of you who don't know what I'm talking about, go Google for YouTube or whatever, Monty Python Dead Parrot skit, and watch it. And the Democrats are the store proprietor who's trying to convince the dissatisfied customer that this dead parrot is really still alive.
John Cleese.
Okay, that's the dead parrot Democrats.
You have something staring at us right here. Here's the proof, and they still insist that no, Trump colluded with Russia. And it doesn't matter what you say; they're just convinced that Trump colluded with Russia, and he didn't.
And the more we learn, the more the more we investigate, the more we learn that it looks like almost everybody except Trump colluded with Russia.
Definitely. You know what? That does bring me to another point. This whole Russiagate thing. There's a lot of people, including myself, who are sick and tired of Democrats not going to jail.
Yeah, he needs he needs to move on that.
That is one thing I can't defend him for.
Start rolling out indictments. I mean, I like Bill Barr, but come on, guys, let's see some indictments. Yet. Not just subpoenas, indictments.
Because investigating and pulling them out in front of people to answer questions, even in the public, that's not good enough.
It's not doing it.
People need to be punished.
People need to go to jail and prison.
People died over this stuff. And people lost their lives over this stuff.
Yeah.
Michael Flynn needs to be avenged. General Flynn needs to be avenged.
Yeah.
He lost everything. I can't defend Trump on that one. I wish he would move on this, but maybe he will.
No, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if there's a long game that he's playing that we just don't know, or if he's just afraid to move on some people, or what the deal is.
Rush Limbaugh brought up a point, and look, you're talking about almost the entire Washington complex. They are all tied so tightly to China.
Oh, like the implications are so broad. You're
talking about almost the entire Congress going to jail if they were going to actually start moving and indicting. I don't know if anyone's got that much power. You're talking about almost a revolution.
So if the evidence leads to 150 indictments, 25 in the Senate and 125 in the Congress, in the House of Representatives, rather.
What are people going to say about that when Trump imagine the movies about...
how would you serve those? How would you enforce those? I mean, you'd have to have quite a contingent of loyal...
You'd need the military to do that.
To round these people up and say, you're really going to go to jail and wait for your trial.
Think of those...
Of course, they would all have enough money to post bond. They would all post bond, and then they would all, flee to some country without extradition.
Well, think about the movies about these third world countries where there's a revolution where the military or the police break into, say, where they're holding Senate hearings and arrest everyone. Mm-hmm. That's what it would be like.
That's true.
I mean, I think almost I think everyone in Congress is involved in this, and I think that's why they hate him, and that's why they fear him so much. I don't know if
that could be. A lot of the hatred of Trump. That's true. It really presents more as fear than hatred. Now, there's a lot of Americans out there, you liberal citizens, who are being programmed to fear Trump, but you are being given a reason for fear that is completely off base and is not the reason that the liberal politicians fear Trump. In fact, bring it back to what I said before. Take your reasons that you think there is to fear Trump, and does that really scan with your daily existence? I mean, do you look over your shoulder? Imagine Trump for 4 more years. Do you really think you're going to be looking over your shoulder?
Afraid of going to jail?
No, that's over stuff you post online or whatever. No, there's not going to be any of that.
And the thing is,
but that's not why the liberal politicians,
the leftist politicians, and the Republican politicians,
a lot of Republicans
are
I bet
scared because they do fear suddenly going to jail, but they would be going to jail for real reasons.
Not inventions.
And
that's true.
I don't think anyone realizes maybe how bad it is there. But to say that Trump's not moving on these politicians that need to be put in jail, we don't know if that could ever happen.
Yeah, maybe we who criticize him for that, maybe we really still don't grasp the scope of the problem.
I lost you for.
All right, yeah. No, I was just saying that maybe we who are criticizing Trump for not moving with the forward with indictments, maybe we don't quite grasp the scope of the problem. I mean, he talked about draining the swamp, and maybe that analogy is more apt than we ever imagined.
Maybe it's to the point that if he actually drained the swamp, we would not have a government.
There would be no one left.
There wouldn't be anyone there.
Maybe draining the swamp would mean, kind of rebooting. Okay, well, let's hold another nationwide convention and just elect a whole new government.
It might be that bad. Okay, that's the last issue I could think of. You got any?
No, I mean, in terms of the reasons that I think people don't vote for Trump, I think it really boils down to, on the left, he's in the way of their specifically communist plans, and on the right, the Never-Trumpers, he threatens their financial welfare from their ties with China economically. Honestly, I think it boils down to that.
One thing.
And you know what? If you're a freedom-loving American, you want Trump in office more than you want any Democrat in office.
There is one thing. In 2016, people like our mother said, "Yeah, I got to vote for Trump because otherwise it's Hillary Clinton." She's not that way now.
Yeah.
But I'm going to hold my nose and vote for Trump. I didn't hold I gladly voted for Trump. But she held her nose because...
No, I thought Trump was going to turn out to be a liberal.
I didn't know what...
But I voted
for him. I was excited by him, and I thought if he does even half the stuff, then he'll be the best politician we've ever had. But he ended up doing a lot more than that. But a lot of people just don't like his attitude.
Don't like what?
People like Mom would say he's icky. He's gruff, and he's impolite, and he's not, quote, presidential.
He's scrappy. You know what? Oh gosh, you know what? Which is so ironic. I don't know if you have ever listened to, there's that Broadway play Hamilton.
I've never watched it.
Okay, so I've listened to it. I can't remember the exact words, but there's like young Alexander Hamilton is it's a play set mostly in rapish type music, and there's this song that young Alexander Hamilton does, and the refrain of the song is talking about, he says, "I'm not giving up my shot," and he repeats the line, "I'm just like my country. I'm young, scrappy, and hungry." That's like Trump. It's like he's never been a politician, and he's he's a scrapper, as we saw in the debate last night, and he he sees opportunities to do good things for people,
right.
and he's hungry to do that.
Right. America never won her victories by being polite. That's not who we are. We're scrappers, and we're fighters, and we're usually not polite about it. Trump is inherently American, and he's,
you know what? I gotta say, Trump is Cincinnati.
Oh yeah.
I was at mass. The past week, and the priest was giving us, doing his sermon. And I didn't realize this, but he brought up in the sermon, he said, I'm from Cincinnati. He said, I always thought of Cincinnati as, Midwest, until I, came out here to Indianapolis, and I realized that Cincinnati is actually a lot more East Coast than Midwest, in the sense that, here in Indiana, you're supposed to watch what you say and be diplomatic and that kind of. In Cincinnati, people just say what they think.
Yeah.
And, he even referred to an incident where, like, two priests are, like, going at it back and forth, really arguing, and he's kind of overhearing it, not really part of the discussion. He asked somebody else, what are they so angry about? He says, angry? Oh, they're not angry. They're just having a discussion.
Yeah, I don't have anything to compare it
but,
to.
Yeah, but that's kind of how we are.
It's the American way. We're blunt about things. At least that's how we always were.
Yeah, roll up our sleeves, do what needs to be done,
tough.
and work hard to get it right. I don't know what
happened in the past 50, 60 years to where that disappeared, but it kind of our cultures have suddenly become more like Great Britain, and it's a little bit embarrassing. And someone like Trump is what we needed.
It's like the worst effeminate qualities of Europe.
Yeah.
Time to go back to being manly.
That's all I got.
Yep, that's all I got too.
I do say I have some current events.
Cool. I don't have any current events. Well, go ahead.
There's a whole bunch of COVID-19. I keep seeing these countries, so-and-so reports 500,000, and the numbers keep getting higher. Again, I'll just ask people, honestly, how many people do you know who have died of COVID-19? And I'll bet the answer is 0. Everybody knows someone who knows someone.
I'm trying to think. The only one single person that I know, and I don't even know him, there's somebody who had like 2 additional like complicating factors that my wife knew when she lived and worked in San Antonio, Texas before we ever met. She learned that he died with COVID, but he had other complicating factors. He didn't necessarily die of COVID. That's the one and only single, near death, close by death.
Every time I ask someone, they give me a story like that. My wife knows this guy. My sister-in-law knows this guy. It's always someone they don't know. It's almost like a urban legend. And the numbers keep going up, and yet I don't see anybody disappearing. All the same people are at work every day. This is a fake pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, we're not saying that the disease isn't real, but
the severity of it has been faked.
The pandemic severity of it, and the people who it is affecting, they do tend to be older, and they tend to be people with multiple other complicating factors. We don't think that their lives are not valuable.
No, but they could be protected in other ways.
But
they could be helped
here's
in
the
other
thing.
ways.
They could, So what have we done? We've taken the people who really are being affected by it, and we've said, we're going to cut you off from your loved ones during what may be your final moments in life. So, I mean, in every way, our response to this has been wrong-headed.
I'll tell you what. Never mind. I'm not going to say it. Okay. Yeah, we've handled it wrong, and I don't know what to say about that. That's all the news for COVID. It's just everybody keeps... Every news story I see is how it's getting worse and worse. And yet, I don't know anyone with COVID. So, whatever. Mexico is investigating claims that 6 Mexican women were sterilized by immigration centers in America without their consent. I would really like to look into that. I hope they really investigate and take that serious, because people like Margaret Sanger...
That's what she wanted.
People like Bill Gates.
Margaret, guys, Bill Gates is like the modern Margaret Sanger. Guys, Margaret Sanger, for all of those who don't know, let's go ahead and explain the real meaning of the word Planned Parenthood. Margaret Sanger founded Planned Parenthood, and the concept was that parenthood would be subject to state planning so that the right kind of people would breed more and the wrong kind of people would breed less. That was Margaret Sanger's vision, and that's Planned Parenthood's founding purpose.
She set up programs and organizations that would go into third world countries and do this. And Bill Gates is active in that sense right now.
That's
so
the Gates
I
Foundation.
Hope this claim from Mexico or these Mexican women isn't ignored, and I hope it's looked into. I don't know. That's all the information I have right now. But okay. Grand jury in Louisville indicts former police officer Brett Hankinson, felony charges of wanton endangerment, not for killing Breonna Taylor, but for I guess I don't even quite understand the charges themselves. I kind of think they were just trying to make it look like they were doing something. But the fact is, the cops who shot her are not going to go to jail. And
okay, you're right. No indictment for.
So within 15 minutes of announcing this, U-Hauls are spotted dropping off riot equipment, not riot equipment for the police, but for rioters in parking lots and stuff in Louisville. There are protests. They call them protests. There are riots. 2 Louisville officers were shot. And finally, the city declared a state of emergency, and they brought in the National Guard. And I guess they were squelched. I don't know if they came back again the next night or what, but I don't know. Yeah, Louisville's a mess right now. Their governor... I remember what he...
Thing is, they should have foreseen this.
Well, they did. And he had, quote, prepared. But personally, I think he should have just gone ahead and shut down the protests. I mean... Yeah.
He should have been prepared by having, multiple contingents of the National Guard standing by.
Yeah. He was elected last year, or 2 years ago, when... He's a Democrat, and I didn't think he really had a chance, except that the guy he was running against was very much disliked.
Oh.
I think he can lose that place if they come up with a good enough person to run against him. Because he's done a terrible job.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that all happened, and I guess Louisville is turning into another... well, I guess not. He did call in the National Guard, so that at least they protected the citizens and their property. But I think things are getting worse and worse in Louisville.
So, that's one of those stories that I've only tangentially is the wrong word, but kind of not really followed, but just sort of heard whatever I hear. If I understand this correctly, the police had a warrant. The warrant was going to be executed at a certain time in the middle of the night. They arrived. They knocked and announced their presence. The woman's boyfriend after the police announced their presence as policemen, fired on them through the door, and they fired back through the door, killing her. And I don't know, did they kill the boyfriend?
I don't know if that's how I don't know if they broke in first and then he started firing, or if he fired through the door.
Oh, okay. Because I thought that was one of the key items, is whether it was a no-announce warrant or not, and they said, no, it is not a no-announce warrant.
That is correct.
They
did announce, but I don't know who fired and when.
Okay. When the firing actually started.
I can't imagine cops actually shooting through a door. That doesn't make much sense. Maybe that's why he got charged.
Even if they were fired on from the outside, it had to be, okay, boom, 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 and then break the door in, and then
shoot people who are firing on you.
Because there might be babies inside or whatever.
Yeah, you wouldn't just fire through a door. That wouldn't make sense. Unless he did, maybe that's why he got indicted.
The police wouldn't have been that
I should hope
irresponsible.
Not. Do you remember the black hole that we photographed? We photographed the event horizon. Whoa, wait a minute. I did not know this. This is not just a black hole. This is a supermassive black hole. Which means it's at the center of a galaxy, right? I
don't know if all supermassive black holes... I don't think so. I don't think they're all... Let me go ahead and Google that. Why? What's the...
Well, they're saying that it's wobbling. Yeah. Okay. So it was a supermassive
First ever picture of a black hole unveiled. The Event
galaxy.
Horizon Telescope, planet-scale array of ground-based radio telescopes, the first image of a supermassive black hole and its shadow, reveals the central black hole of Messier 87, a massive galaxy in the Virgo cluster. Okay. Yeah, so it is a galaxy in a galaxy cluster.
And the crescent appears to be wobbling. How would it wobble? Generally, wobbling comes from when we see a star go back and forth because of the planets going around it, right?
Okay, hold on. MIT review.
What if there were two black holes there instead of one?
Only black hole we've ever seen has a shadow that wobbles.
Okay, so that could be something that's happening in the black hole that we don't quite understand yet.
Right.
That's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I'll have to read about that.
So anyway, that's the news story. We were able to get a picture of the of the shadow of the black hole, which is at the center of a galaxy, and now we're seeing that the crescent shadow is wobbling.
Oh, okay. So they're saying that the bright crescent that around the shadow is wobbling, and the MIT article I'm reading, there's so much turbulent matter surrounding it that it makes sense that it would bug out and get fidgety, but the fact that we can actually watch it over time means we have an established method for studying the physics of one of the most extreme kinds of environment in the entire universe.
Wow.
Okay, so it's not that it's like super surprising that it's wobbling, it's super exciting that it's wobbling on a timeline that we can observe.
Okay. Well, that is pretty cool. In other space news, they have confirmed the existence of 4 underground saltwater lakes on Mars.
Really?
Yeah.
Like, confirmed or
scientists in a paper published to Nature Astronomy confirmed the existence of 4 underground saltwater lakes near Mars' south pole. How did they? Are we talking about liquid?
Stable reservoir of salty liquid water measuring some 12 miles across lies nearly a mile beneath the planet's south pole. The only way I can imagine is through some kind of...
We'd have to get something there.
How much? Yeah, I mean, you're talking about ground penetrating radar or something like that, but that's only like on the surface stuff.
What is the surface? When they say
underground lake found. Okay, so NPR says beneath the ice.
So there's actual ice on top, like the moons of.
It has strong evidence. Let's see, this one is from... this is from 2 years ago. Evidence of a subsurface lake of liquid water. It's a discovery that adds to the speculation that there could once have been life. comes from an instrument called Marsis aboard the European Space Agency's Mars Express spacecraft in orbit around. So they've got a instrument in orbit around the planet.
So
it does have a special kind of radar called ground penetrating. Okay, so they are actually able to use ground penetrating radar from an orbit.
Okay.
They don't have to actually be on the ground. Okay, that's how they're seeing.
But the surface here, is it actually ice on the surface that we're looking at? Or is there rock and we're looking under rock to see this lake?
This article
I thought there was no surface water on Mars.
That's the thing. When you're talking about the poles on Mars, it's so-called ice could be non-water ice. It could be other kinds of ice. But I don't know. They want to talk about the technology and stuff.
I didn't know if we're looking at like
that's
Europa.
One of the other things is that astronomers. I learned listening to the titanium physics podcasts that words like ice, metal, and water and gas and stuff that they don't mean the same thing to astronomers that they mean to everybody else in the world. So I don't know. I can't trust it.
I'm thinking, is this like it is on Europa? Is this giant moon made pretty much of H2O?
Like what, frozen methane or
frozen
something like
water.
that?
And underneath the frozen water, we've decided that there are vast lakes, and they spew out liquid water into the air sometimes. And it's kept heated enough to be liquid because of the shifting gravity, and the friction that causes inside, squeezing the moon, and all that friction creates enough heat to melt the water. And they have geysers that pop up. So I didn't know if this was something similar or what. What else do we got? Google and YouTube announced that after the polls close on November 3rd, they will stop allowing political ads, even if there is confusion or civil unrest while votes are counted. That's kind of a weird... So what are they going to announce?
Why would you care?
Are they going to announce the decision or what?
I don't know.
Are they going to not let people? I don't know. It's a weird thing to say.
Yeah, I mean, I get that the political ads would be pointless.
Yeah, who would spend money on a political ad after the election?
But if somebody wants to, why would you reject their money?
It's goofy. Unless they're thinking there are people who are going to try to promote the idea that Trump won, and other people trying to promote the idea that Trump lost. And what they're saying is pretty much the network news is going to control the outcome by telling us who won or lost, something of that nature.
Instead of so like if you want to, so by political ads they don't mean political campaign ads. They mean they're going to suppress people trying to get information.
I think that's really what that's all about.
That could be what they mean. Okay, yeah. Which means they're probably also going to try to suppress searches and stuff that people might do.
So after months of rioting in Portland, Governor Kate Brown declares a state of emergency because, quote, white supremacist groups like Proud Boys are traveling from out of state to attend a anti-protest
protest.
So she's finally going to declare a state of emergency, and
even though the left has been shipping protesters into Portland for all these months. Now that the right is shipping some witnesses into Portland, she's going
to shut it down. Yeah, okay.
That's funny.
Terrible. So Trump had issued that executive order banning TikTok from smartphone app stores, and a court in the District of Columbia has blocked Donald Trump's executive order. And because they consider it a form of censorship, I guess we'll wait and see what happens on that one. I think Trump does have some serious.
I think it's got legitimate
Yeah.
concerns there. TikTok is a product by a Chinese company, and again, I used very strong words about China before, folks. I know this from working in an industry where there is a lot of involvement in China. Let me just give you a little bit of a picture of the Chinese government's interest in breaking the cybersecurity of other companies, other countries, and other individuals. If you go and stay in a Chinese hotel, you can be sure that your Wi-Fi will be scanned by the hotel in attempts to break into your devices, whether they be telephones, laptops, or whatever. The staff at the hotel will boot your devices up to see if they can find ways to break in. And if they can, they will follow certain procedures that they have in place to try to make information available to the government. If you sell a product in China that involves security, you will be required, as a condition of being allowed to sell the product in China, to provide the government with all secret keys that are held in and used by your product. That's why a lot of companies, like car manufacturers, they have like special, secret keys that are in their products to, for their radios and other modules in the car. They'll basically manufacture two sets of all these things. One set has one set of keys that they can give to the Chinese government. They sell those in China, and the other set is used around the world where they don't have to reveal the secret keys. The Chinese government is involved in league with Chinese businesses in the work of industrial espionage against all other countries of the world. So yeah, TikTok is a concern.
What amazes me is how quickly Google and Facebook and Apple bend to that government to get their fingers into that economy. It's amazing to me that none of these companies, these American companies, are really American anymore. I mean, I think we're close to being able to say that some of these companies are enemies of the United States. TikTok is certainly one of them.
I would say. Yeah. Yep.
Speaking of Trump, I don't even understand why this is a news article. Talking about in the past 15 years, he paid $750 in income tax. I don't think we really know this, first of all. Second of all, no one cares.
Yeah, who cares?
I mean,
I've heard one theory that Trump is trying to portray himself as a successful businessman, and that he doesn't want his tax returns released because they show that he paid a lot lower taxes than would be consistent with that, and he doesn't want people to realize that a lot of his businesses maybe are failing, and his businesses aren't doing as well as he wants people to believe they are, or something like that. Even so, who cares?
I still don't care. He's doing so much good for us. Who cares?
Yeah.
I don't know why they keep thinking that this is... How can they be so deranged that they think we're going to drop him because of his income taxes? I don't...
Right. It's just nuts.
They've got to be really crazy to think that. There's something wrong with them if they think that this is what's going to separate us. It's incredible. That's all the news I got.
I wish I had nonsense news, but I don't. I was completely unprepared.
That's all right. I kind of popped you on it.
Unfortunately.
We need to...
I don't know. Is there like...
We just haven't been preparing. And then finally I said, all right, we got to do it tonight.
But you know what? The thing is... Yeah, but I, even while we were talking, I jumped on and did my normal searches. It's like I can't find anything that's as interestingly nonsense as the political nonsense going on today.
It's crazy. Okay, well, we'll end it there then, and I'm not sure what we're doing next week. I have not looked at. You had a list of articles, and I haven't looked at or subject ideas.
Oh,
I haven't looked at them yet.
Yeah, we'll have to pick something.
And hopefully we'll get back together next week and keep this rolling for a while again.
Yep.
All right, folks. Well, as always.
In the meantime,
pray.
Think about what we said and circle the beats.
Have a good day.
Bye.